Hey guys, welcome back. This is episode 3 of the suspension and handling makeover. Episode 1, I removed the coil springs here, and episode 2, I removed the brake rotor and the inner tie rods and outer tie rods. Now episode 3, we're going to take a break from that and we're going to move on to the front sway bar here. So I want to replace the bushings. So today I'm going to remove that. We're going to look at some different ways to measure what size sway bar you currently have. We'll talk about if you want to upgrade or not. And then we'll put it back in. So really all you need is a 13 millimeter deep well and then a 5/8 deep well. So 13 millimeter will take care of your sway bar bracket right there, one on each end, and then the 5/8 is for up here. So now you see right down in there, it's a plastic clip that's supposed to hold the nuts on those bolts, but they tend to break. Matter of fact, the one on the other side is already broken. So I'm going to get that plastic clip off first. That way I can just get my 5/8 on there and hold the nuts that are underneath this plastic little rail that runs across. So, all right, let's get to work. Alright, I had to break out the drill on that one. That was challenging. Usually I just use hand tools, but it's a lot of turns and it was hard to hold the top and the bottom. Turn the bottom at the same time. Right, so here's the bolt. There's the nut that was on the other side, on this side. And that's it. That's all that's holding the sway bar on. So you can see the bracket is completely loose now. The other side I'll do from underneath. Alright, so I had some type of technology glitch and I lost the audio from the next few clips. So basically I'm on the other side, breaking these loose with my ratchet, and then I move on to the drill just to make this a little faster. These are pretty long bolts. I was holding the socket on the top while I was turning it down at the bottom. Really, you could get to both from the bottom just using like a stubby wrench. And now I'm just talking about how you need to go ahead and remove those splash shields from each side, because the sway bar goes through those. So I get that out of the way, and then the sway bar is ready to pull out. Now the convertible has these brackets, and I do end up removing these brackets later on in the video. Should have removed them now, would have made it a little bit easier to get this out, but it was also helpful that they kept the sway bar from dropping down as I unbolted it. So it's kind of a double-edged sword there, but if you don't have a convertible, you probably don't have those braces. Alright, this thing was covered with grease and buildup from years of things leaking on the front of the car. So I'm going to have to degrease that quite a bit. Now here I want to show you the sway bar bushings were very loose, and let me get rid of that bracket and I'll show you how dry rotted the bushing is. Alright, here you can see all the cracks and splits there, and both sides were just like this, very rotted. Matter of fact, I think the other side was coming apart even more. So I'll show it again later on in the video when I'm at the table. Alright, well I've got the sway bar out of the car, got it degreased. And now we're ready for the next step. So there's several things we want to talk about before we go anywhere beyond this point. Things you'll need to consider, such as the size of your sway bar versus the size you need for your sway bar. Weight, if the weight makes a difference, if you're drag racing but you still want to have a sway bar on there, if you're doing any type of racing, even autocross or road course, maybe you want a lighter sway bar but you still want something heavy duty. We're going to talk about bushings, and we'll also talk about grease for the bushings, and then we're going to talk about the mounts. So let's just get started. First of all, the size. I will say that most of your stock sway bars on, say, 87 to 93 is going to be 1 5/16, which is what this is. Unfortunately, over the years, especially through the 90s, a lot of people were going to drag racing. They would take these off, or they would switch with somebody that had, say, an earlier 4-cylinder that was a much smaller bar, therefore a lot lighter. They still had some kind of sway bar on there. So it's hard to tell if you have the stock sway bar or not. So there's different ways to measure it. We'll talk about those real quick. You could take a 1 1/8 wrench and see if that slides on here. If it doesn't fit, I mean, just bigger than 1 1/8, so it's either going to be 1 5/16 or 1 3/8. So the other way you could do is use a crescent wrench. Kind of get that over there, tighten it up. Doesn't have to be super tight. Then measure the distance here, or you can also if you have a digital caliper, put it in millimeters. Tighten this up here. Doesn't have to be super tight. This is close. And I can see this is 33.57 millimeters. I don't know if that shows up on camera or not. 33.57. So I can tell you that 1 5/16 is 33.5 millimeters. If it's a 1/8, you'll be in the 28.5 millimeter range, and if it's a 1 3/8, you'll be in a 35 millimeter range. So if it's anywhere near, between 33 and 34, it's going to be the 1 5/16. All right, so that's measuring for you. All right, well, let's talk about weight. So this sway bar, I weighed it just a little bit ago. It is 21 pounds. So if weight is a concern, but you still want a heavy-duty sway bar, the sway bar from Steeda is 1 3/8, which is a 1/16 of an inch bigger than this bar, but it only weighs around 18 pounds, which is about 4 pounds lighter. So if you're going to replace the sway bar, I think the Steeda is probably the way to go. There's a couple other manufacturers out there that sells larger sway bars. I like the way the Steeda one is made. The Steeda, instead of having this stamped, basically like crushed, steel here, they actually have this machined, so that steel isn't put under that stress in the manufacturing process. So this could be a little bit stronger through this area. Also, the Steeda is, see how this is curved through here? The Steeda is straighter, and it has a stop right here to keep it from moving beyond this point when you have your bushing on there. So I do like that Steeda bar. So if you're going to do an upgrade, that's what I would recommend. And there's a link below this video, or below the video that way. I'm not sure which way it's going. So there will be a link below for the Steeda bar. Alright, so let's talk about bushings. So here's my stock bushings. As you can see, these are all cracked and broken, coming apart. I don't know how old these are. I doubt they're original. I feel like they would be even more broken apart if they were original. But that's what happens to these rubber bushings. They start to dry rot. The sway bar bushings, are at the front of the car, right underneath the front of the engine, so these get hit with power steering fluid, any leaks you have on the front of the engine, oil leaks, anything, and, you know, the sway bar is mounted kind of low, so everything comes down and has a potential to get on these and start the breakdown process. Now on my car, I'm not going to be doing any racing, road course, drag racing, anything like that. I'm going with the polyurethane bushings, the 1 5/16. That part number is 61126. These bushings will definitely hold up to weather, hold up to moisture, grease, oil, anything that gets on them. They're going to hold up. Very durable, and they're much harder than the rubber bushings. And they do come with the grease you need. So the other bushing type you would have, if you get the larger sway bar 1 3/8, there's a Delrin bushing you'll see out there. And Delrin is just a certain type of plastic, and it's the DuPont brand. So you may see other names such as Ultraform or Celcon or something, but it's just a really hard plastic that's I would say much more durable than even polyurethane, and just as resistant to chemicals, weather, all of that stuff. So that would be really good to use if you're going with a 1 3/8 bar and you're going to be doing some hard driving. I would recommend the Delrin brand, but I'm not going to be doing that, so I'm going with polyurethane. And Delrin is also a little bit more expensive. If you have a machine shop that can make bushings for you, machine bushings, you can get an actual raw stick of Delrin, and they can machine it just like they would metal and make the bushings for you, so that could be an option. Alright, so we'll talk about grease for a minute. This comes with grease to use for these, and this is a silicone grease. If you're going back with rubber bushings, you want to use something like a white lithium. You do not want a petroleum-based grease on any rubber product. So keep that in mind. Petroleum will start breaking this down. Let's see, what's next? How about mounts? So these stock mounts, these are very heavy-duty steel. Totally fine for using these polyurethane bushings. If you get the 1 3/8 sway bar, you may want to go to the upgraded mounts as well. There's one from Steeda that's all aluminum. There's other brands. I think BMR makes a sway bar mount that's improved from the stock mount. Again, I'm going with the stock mount. These nuts and bolts I'm going to be cleaning up and painting these, so those will be fine to reuse as well. I think that's it. Only thing else we need to cover is paint. I am going to repaint this bar. I'm just going to, I've already degreased it, which I may do one more time. Then I'm going to sand it down, clean it all with like a rubbing alcohol, just to get any last little bits of oil off of there. And then use a rust inhibiting primer, and then a gloss paint. This will be ready to install. So I'm going to do that. We'll be right back. Right, before we paint, I did want to show you the end links I got also from Prothane. I'm going to be replacing my stock end links with these. So these are actually a much larger end link bolt, heavier duty hardware, and we've got the polyurethane bushings. So this should be perfect for what I'm doing. They do make some of these different brand with the Delrin bushings, but I will have a link for this set and the sway bar bushings and the Steeda sway bar all below this video, down in the comments. So check that out. I'm going to get this painted. Be right back. Alright, so now I've got these painted. Went ahead and hit the brackets while I had them off, and the sway bar is coming along nicely. So I might do one more coat on that just to make sure it's thoroughly covered. But while I'm waiting on that coat to dry, I'm going to go ahead and remove these supports under here. If you had a convertible, you probably have these under your front end. So I'm going to remove these. Looks like they need to be painted as well. just to make it easier to get the sway bar back in there, because the sway bar goes above this. So that'll make that a little bit easier. So I'm going to go ahead and pull those out, and almost ready to start putting it back together. Okay, so I got the brace off. I wanted to show you something real quick. Whenever you're pulling parts off, maybe somebody painted it in the past or something, I don't know, but you can see that the paint is kind of bubbled up. It looks very rough, but there's paint over it. Whenever you see that on any parts you take off your car, you need to take a heavy wire brush or a scraper or something and get rid of all that. What's happening is there's rusting, moisture is getting under the paint and rusting underneath there. You can see where some is flaked off right in this circle, and the rest has rust, kind of heavy rust under the paint. So that'll cause what I would call a rapid failure of this. If I didn't fix this, it would just rust faster than it normally would when you just have surface rust like this, because it traps the water in there. So we'll scrape this off, put some primer on here. I guess I might as well paint the whole thing and get that fixed up. I'll show you what it looks like after I scrape the paint off. Okay, I used a pretty heavy duty steel wire brush, and I scraped on this for maybe like 20 seconds, and the paint came off really easily, and you can see the rust that's under there, and it's much more pitted than say right in here where there's a little bit of rust. It's kind of hard to see. Let's flip this over. There we go. See, here you've got some surface rust, but it's still fairly smooth. It's not all pitted like it gets on these ends here. So when you see anything like that, just clean it up good and paint it before you put it back on. Alright, as you can see, the sway bar turned out nicely, and we're ready for bushings now. Alright, so these bushings have a lot of grooves in it, probably like 20 or 30 grooves across here. I don't know if you can see inside there and there. Basically, you want to put your silicone in here by hand and smooth it all the way around and get in all of these grooves that are in here, and then we'll just slip it over the bar. So just rub that around, make sure it's fully coated. So if you get in the right light, you can kind of look through there and see where it's covered and where it isn't. Should be good. Now we can just put this on here. There we go. I'll do the same thing for the other side. Alright, that looks good. There. Alright, so now we're ready for the brackets. So these turned out okay. Painted these. I left these the original paint. these you have to kind of squeeze on kind of tightly. There we go. Now on here you have some long tabs and short tabs. You want to put the long tabs in first. And get those down in the bracket first, like so. And then the bottom, if the other side doesn't fall into place, you may have to kind of squeeze it down. This is actually fitting kind of loosely. I think this one's bent out a little bit from when I took it off. Let's see how this one does. There we go. Kind of clipped in and is not falling off. So that's it. This is ready to be mounted back in the car, except that I'm going to clean these bolts up just a little bit. Alright, so we're ready to go ahead and put this in. And now if you have a helper, now's when you need the help, but if not, you have to rely on some tie wraps to help. I'll show you where I'm going to put these. So in between the two bolt holes, there's another little hole right there in the center, the square one, where the clip goes. I think it goes on the top of this. So you just want to set your tie wrap in there, like so. Same thing on the other side. And I'm going to set the camera down. Okay, I've got the other tie wrap in place. And it is a good idea to either have the dust shields completely removed, or just have it pulled back out of the way. This one, I just have a couple clips off, and I just have it kind of shoved over here off to the side, just so it's not in the way, so you can put that sway bar straight up. Now, get this end up here. You don't want to make this tight, you just want to have that zip tie catch just enough to hold it there and still be plenty loose. Put up the other side. Alright, now the sway bar is held in place with the zip ties, and it's just a matter of putting in the nuts and bolts. So the best way to do that is just to go ahead and get one bolt in, put through, push it up through the hole, and then start the nut. There we go. Then just go ahead and start another bolt. Push it through, start the nut. Alright, now we have the nuts and bolts both connected on this end, so now we can remove the zip tie. Then we repeat the process over on this side. Alright, so we've got the sway bar in place, both bushings, mounts. in. It's just a matter of tightening up the 4 nuts on these bolts, and then we'll be ready for the end links. And if you've got a stubby 5/8, you can actually use that to hold the top nut here. So you can do the entire installation from under the car instead of having to hold a socket on it from above. Alright, so I got both sides tightened down almost all the way. They could use a few more turns, get it torqued down fully. I'm going to wait until I put the end links in. Of course, I'm not going to put the end links in yet until I replace the control arms. So, I believe that concludes this episode. But I can tell, there's not even being torqued down all the way, that this is nice and snug. Where the last time this was kind of flopping around freely, and now it's nice and tight in there. So that is it. Thanks for watching. Check down in the summary below. I've got links to a lot of the parts and pieces I've used here. The sway bar bushings, end links, a couple of the upgraded sway bars like for Steeda and I think Beltec. So I've got links for all that down below. I'll also list the sway bar, common sway bar sizes that the Mustangs had, 79 through 93, just to give you an idea of what probably originally came in your car, even though that may not be what you have now. So hopefully this video was helpful. Please leave any comments if you have any suggestions of anything else you want to see, or if I got any of my numbers wrong there, just let me know. I always appreciate comments, good or bad. And go ahead and hit the like button if you liked the video, and subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. And thanks for watching. Hey, thanks for sticking around to the end. Wanted to include another garage tip of the week. As you know, I usually work on the floor of the garage, on the driveway. So a couple things I use. One is one of these mats you get like at a hardware store for gardening, just a regular foam mat. This will save the knees. Also, if I'm rolling around on my back under the car, I bought this roll of this diamond plate foam mat. It's not too thick, but it comes in like an 8-foot roll, and I swear it was like maybe $10. And I got it, who knows where I got it, maybe Walmart or one of the hardware stores or Harbor Freight or somewhere. But it's a pretty good mat to roll around on. It'll save your back and your knees. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Just be on the lookout when you're out at different stores for things like this that you can use in the driveway. This foam mat I also actually use in my toolbox just as a extra padding here. And you can cut this out. And I have my regular drawer liner in there, and then the foam mat here on top of that. So that's it. And see you next time.